Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, open up your notes. We're going to be picking back up where we left off, detailing the situation in the Congo, which is part of the identified Cold War Paper 2, Topic 12, things that need to be covered. And so we will be unpacking the situation in the Congo from 1960 to 1964, although we'll give you a little bit more of we'll take it up to near into the present. And we'll actually take it before 1960. We can't just drop in 4 years and go, well, this is what we're talking about. It's like I've been having meetings with you guys, and most of you guys have done a really, really good job on your IA as far as like that first paragraph in your introduction or in your investigation where you give some background. Although, of course, many of you have identified, wow, that's not many words that I can use to try and go through all the details and so forth on that. If you missed a meeting, set up a time with me to do a makeup, and I would be happy to have that meeting. Otherwise, I think in here, I have met with everybody except for one after school today, one on Monday, and then the at-home viewers, I've got all those meetings to do. I've got like 6 meetings, and we'll set those up through Zoom, and I'll communicate how we're going to do that, because that's going to be like after hours sort of stuff. Yes, Daniel? Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Turn it in. Oh, I think for the retake on the, as far as like, is it too late to turn that in? No, it's not too late. Just print it out and hand it to me. Yeah, like this, like Tara. That's a piece of paper that has the retake stuff on it. Basically, it's like the 2 paragraphs, one on the Indian-Pakistan War and the other on the Algerian Independence War. That was like the at-home assignment rather than give people the test, quiz, that you guys took in class. It's on Google Classroom. Google Classroom is lovely. I have challenges with it sometimes, but you can put something in there, it stays, and it is a very helpful thing. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Do you remember exactly what I said? Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. 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 Dan was like, ha, 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 ha. Showa, I'll do it. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And this one, just to give you a sense, like this test for this unit that we're on here, and we'll have 2 of these units. That's my goal, to get through 2 of these units. Cold War 2 of 3, and then Cold War 3 of 3 before the semester's over. This test on this unit is going to be like 75 points, okay, which is about, typical for a unit this size. Okay? And then what's the big thing, Ellie, that's going to be due on December 18th that's worth 100 points? IA. And I tell you what, one of the things I've discovered as I've been having the meetings is some people in particular I think really could benefit, and I'm going to try and set up some in-class peer review time where I encourage you to do it outside of class, and some of you guys are really good peer reviewing your own and clearing up avoidable mistakes and things like that. But I think my goal is to try and have that in class as well, just so that, because your final draft, that's final. And if you have some like really bad, clearly yucky, like misspelling or miscapitalization or something like that, it's best if you can identify that before the final due date and get that cleaned up. Okay? So, also, just keep an eye. We've got, as of Tuesday, we've got 4 more weeks until the presidential election. Raise your hand if you watched all or part of the debate on Monday. I watched about 15 minutes, and then I'm like, this is sort of what I expected, maybe even worse. And then I, of course, followed the coverage afterwards. And I don't want entertainment like a food fight in presidential debates. I actually want a respectful exchange of ideas, because there are some very important differences of opinions. Really? I missed the part where somebody told somebody else to shut up, right? Yes. I mean, like, what's going to happen in the next debate? Is it going to be shut up? You know, is it going to be we're going to get that way too? I hope not. So, like, give the moderator a mute button. You know, just like a Zoom classroom. Shut up. Shut them up. That they're actually negotiating whether or not to give the moderator that kind of authority. You know, I don't think that's such a bad idea. Yeah. Do classroom teachers use that on Zoom lessons? Do they have to in any of you guys' classes? Once or twice? Not so much, yeah. I don't know that any of us like a real blurter among the current like seniors and so forth. I think all the potential blurters and so forth have moved on, you know. You guys are serious, right? You're the survivors. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, we're going to finish it. We're going to finish this thing. And we might have to reintroduce you to the rest of your class. It is interesting because like people have been like scheduling their meetings. Like some of you guys, like you scheduled it for after school and agreeing there, and you're like, oh, I haven't seen you for so long, right? Yeah. Well, virtual hugs. So, questions, comments? Oh, senior night for the volleyball? When is it? You're not supposed to know? I thought because that's when like your parents are, I mean, traditional senior night, like your parents are there and everyone's like, you know, whoop, 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 whoop. I mean, people can go to the games anyway, right? Do they wear masks? Did they? That's good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stands. You can spread out in the stands. That shouldn't be a problem. Okay, exactly. So when's that? When is the Wednesday? Tuesday, the 6th of October. Okay. That would be cool. But as one of your teammates said, oh, yeah, we're going to state. I'm like, wow, confident. Maya, yeah. Yeah, no, I know. You guys are undefeated. Hello. I mean, I don't know how many teams go from district to state, but you guys would just like have to fall off a cliff not to get to state. So don't fall off a cliff, okay? Yeah, it's like, yeah. Yeah, don't hurt your shoulder. You already did that. Okay, no more. All right, you guys ready? Let's get to it. Okay, here we go. Shh, ladies and gentlemen, the Congo. It's not just a dance that you can do in a time of non-social distancing. Okay, yeah, that would be kind of funny. Yeah. But actually, when you look at the situation in the Congo, it's not funny. All right, here we go. Write it down. It is not funny. Yeah, I know, yeah. So we might as well get the chuckles like ahead of time. The Congo is complicated. I'm going to have to look very carefully at my notes and so forth to make sure that we get it all in the right order. Here's the background. The Congo is in Africa, okay? Whoops. And actually, that map doesn't necessarily help you as much as, if you look right here today, right, if you look at the map of Africa, it's actually easy to spot because it's one of the largest land continents or countries in Africa. There it is. Today, it's referred to as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. When I was your age, I think they referred to it as Zaire. During the time of colonial, when Africa fell under the colonial rule of European powers, write this down. It was the Belgians who had the Congo. Belgium. I mean, Belgium wasn't even a country until like the early 1800s when they broke away from the Netherlands because they're like, hey, we speak French, and we're Catholic, and we don't want to hang out necessarily in the same country with all you Dutch, you know, Protestants, etc., and so forth. So Belgium had a king, his name was Leopold, and he basically was the personal owner of the Congo. You can write that down. So it was really weird. It was like, you know, the government of Belgium didn't really have so much necessarily direct control of the Congo. It was like an imperial possession of the king. And let me tell you about this, because this is going to help you. What I tell you here is going to help you later on next semester when we talk about this little area to the east of this Congo region, Rwanda, which had been held by the Germans. And you guys know what happened to German imperial possessions, colonies after World War I. Yeah, they all got taken away. Rwanda will be handed over to the Belgians. Yeah? Sometime. This would be an example where that sort of kind of happened in some. Some of them are going to maintain closer connections. Here's a real quick answer to that. Generally, France and Britain maintained a fair amount of connection and relations with the governments there. Some of the, in fact, write this down because this all kind of like ties into this. Some of the European countries did a better job of preparing their colony for independent self-rule afterwards. And that was one of the points I was going to make about Belgium. They didn't. They didn't. They did not prepare the Congo for self-rule and independence. And you know, by way of like defense of those European countries, pretty much all of this independence is going to take place in the 10 to 20 years after World War II. And that's when the United States is like the number one, power of the free nations. And they're putting pressure on France and Britain and so forth to relinquish their colonies and others because it looks bad, right? We're saying people should rule themselves. And that's what the Soviet Union is. I mean, they're at least saying that. And and so it looks bad if Britain and France and so forth are maintaining their colonial empires. And so ultimately, they will relinquish them. There's also a very strong independence movement in those colonies. I mean, imagine if you're like in a French colony in Africa or Southeast Asia, and you're like, wow, France is in charge of us? They couldn't even beat the Germans. So there's a lot of independence fervor, and a lot of those areas are going to be becoming independent. Literally, I think the last ones are going to be like in the 1970s in Africa that gained their independence from, and I think it's like the Portuguese. They're pretty slow in handing it over. Well, the Belgians are going to be under a lot of pressure, and they will ultimately relinquish control of the Congo, the Belgian Congo, in 1960. So a lot of critical events are going to be taking place in 1960. But just understand this. A lot of Africans weren't really thrilled about being under the control of Europeans. I mean, you can throw Algeria in there. We already talked about Algeria. And even in there, you still had a significant portion, like 10% of the population, that was actually French. In the Belgian Congo and most of the sub-Saharan colonies, African colonies, there weren't that many Europeans there. Basically, what the Europeans did is they relied on local tribes. They gave favoritism to one tribe, and those carried out some of the responsibilities of, like, military enforcement and governance. Although in Belgium, even if you had like soldiers who were Congolese, their officers were white. Write that down. Their officers were the white Belgians. So your military command structure still had, your political command structure still had whites, Belgians, at the top of it. And there wasn't much effort to train up the Congolese people to be ultimately in charge. British did a better job of that. French maybe did a little bit better job of that. In fact, this picture, the reason why I chose this picture right here, tells you something about the condition for many of the people in the Congo during the time of Belgian control. It's weird because you're like, slavery ended, in the early 1800s. And yet, in Leopold's Congo, they're not throwing you in chains and taking you across the Atlantic Ocean. They're putting you in chains in your own home area. It's not very good what was going on there. Okay? So you can get a sense that there's going to be a lot of Congolese. Write this down. There's a lot of Congolese that have a lot of built-up resentment toward the Belgians. And some of that stuff is going to hit the fan in 1960. It's going to get ugly. All right? Now, here's something else you need to know that's very, very important about this particular region, and actually a lot of regions in Africa. Very resource rich. Write that down. Natural resources, very, very important. In fact, to give you an example, and this is going to help explain sort of like the years after the Congo, after this sort of 1960, 1964 period that officially we're looking at. In the years, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and so forth, the United States, you can make a little note of that, the United States is going to have a really particular interest in who's in charge of the Congo. And one of the main reasons we have a particular interest in who's in charge of the Congo is because we want to be friends with who's in charge of the Congo. Why? So we have access to those minerals. We're like, well, how important are those minerals? Well, some of those minerals you can pretty much only get from that part of the world. And you need them if you're going to be putting together, like, aircraft. The Wright brothers used what, by contrast, is pretty flimsy material for their first planes. These super fast, super stealthy, super amazing, like American aircraft now, are put together with a hybrid of various different minerals, composite mineral connections. And some of those minerals we can only get from that part of the world. So, is it our national security interest to maintain some kind of positive relations with whatever government's there? Sure. And during the Cold War, sometimes it's like, well, they got a terrible government, they're repressive of their people, but you know what? They seem to be in charge, and so therefore, we'll help them out. And when do we stop helping them out? When they seem to be not in charge. You're like, wow, that seems awfully self-serving. And yet, those are some of the considerations that take place. But it goes back to the time of the Belgians. What mattered most to the Belgians as far as the colony of the Congo? The resources, exactly, the resources. That will help you to understand how things play out in the early days of Congo's independence. Another thing you need to know is, and this is true of a lot of areas of Africa as far as the colonies. When the colony boundaries were drawn, the boundaries were drawn irrespective of any local tribal presence. So, for example, write this down. In this Belgian colony of the Congo, you had a lot of different tribal groups that wouldn't have necessarily come together on their own as one country. You got that? So that's going to be a challenge you're going to see pop up in various different places in Africa. As they become independent, they'll look and go, do we really want to stay together? Or maybe we want to break apart. So that's going to be a real challenge. Put this down. In the Congo, you've got some particular areas, and write it down. Some of those areas will want to be separate from whatever country comes and gains its independence. Best examples, in the south, Katanga. Near the south, there's a smaller region called South Kasai. Both of those are indicated if you look on your paper that I gave you. Page 1, you can see South Kasai and Katanga. Those are examples of regions that are like, we're not really interested in being a part of whatever else you guys are doing in the rest of the country. We'll see the same pop up. I think this is the unit we talk about Nigeria. Yeah, one of the last components of this unit, we talk about the Nigerian Civil War, where one of the areas is like, we don't want to have anything to do with the rest of you, thank you very much. We're just going to go ahead and be a separate country. And actually, the analogy is pretty close, Congo and Nigeria. Put this down about Katanga. You ready? Very mineral rich. That is where there is a lot of mining going on. And the companies that are doing the mining are Belgian companies. And who are the officials in there, like operating those businesses? Belgian workers. So in the Katanga, you have a fair amount of Belgians working, mining the soil, taking out the rich mineral resources. They were doing that during the time of Belgium's occupancy, and guess what they want to continue doing when it becomes independent? They want to continue doing that as well. Okay? Yeah. What's that? Who's neutral? Well, I'm just identifying Katanga and South Kasai. In the story that I tell about how when the Congo becomes independent, they're going to want to like break off and become their own separate countries. Ready? Spoiler alert, neither of them are going to be able to do that. If you go to that part of the world today, it's still part of one big country. Although, whatever national government there is has a real hard time maintaining absolute control over the entire area. It's a mess. If you guys remember like the Lord's Army, or what was it called, Lord's Resistance Army or something like that? Gosh, what was that guy? They did fundraising for it. Lord's Resistance Army. It was actually originated up in like Uganda, and there was this guy, and he would go around and raid villages and take children away. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. You know about that, right? Okay, and so he would do that, and then he would get them all drugged up, and they would be part of his little like children army. Right? And you're like literally, if like you're in it's horrible. You're like in a Ugandan community, and you like hide your kids out because at nighttime they would just swoop down and grab your kids away, and then they would become the drug-addled part of their army. This guy was messed up. Eventually, the United States, I think this was during Obama's administration, the United States tried to give like local governments, national governments there, some ability to actually find those guys. And eventually, I think they were not able to operate very well in Uganda, which let's see if you can see it right here. Uganda is sort of like just sort of the northeast, off the northeast part of the Congo. Just to give you a sense of just how messed up things are. They're still operating with quite a bit of impunity in the northeast part of the Congo. Oh, and by the way, when we get to the whole Rwandan-like mess, that's going to spill over as well into the Congo. So when you guys were freshmen here at North Star, I was over at Jefferson Elementary, helping with like English language learners and kids and so forth, many of whom were from the Congo. They were refugees from that area. And they were fortunate to be in the United States of America. And boy, when we did fire drills, it's like we had to be like really, really cool because imagine being a kid and part of your experience as a kid is like having your village bombed or your refugee camp bombed or things like that. You didn't ask questions when you saw a little boy that had like fingers missing, because you kind of figured that, that might have been because of something. I mean, it was a really cool experience. Not that I'm, not unhappy about teaching you guys. But yeah, it helps to understand. So, I mean, I knew from having taught that area that this wasn't just an area of Africa. You can write this down. The Congo area is messed up in so many different ways. It has so many different challenges. Oh, but by the way, the people are really cool. And some of them are part of your neighbors and living in the Boise area right now. Getting a head start, trying to get going, just like maybe your immigrant families were doing way back when, and so forth, as part of this amazing American country that we live in. So, a little bit more detail about how things played out in the Congo at that time. Here is your official Independence Day, June 30th, 1960. June 30th, 1960. Okay, not too far from July 4th. June 30th, 1960. Wow, here's one for you. What event occurred in Boise, Idaho 30 years after June 30th, 1960? I got a present. And I gave away a present, too. No, not the guitar. I got married. I got married. Yeah, I was looking at my ring. You're like, anyway. So weird. That was like 30 years. We celebrated our 30th anniversary. So this was 60 years ago. Anyway, dates. So the Congo gets their independence. Okay, so they're officially going to be known as like the Republic of the Congo. I think they started out that way. It's always a little confusing because, what do they call the Republic? Because the one right across the water, the Congo River, is called the Republic of the Congo. So it's a little confusing that way. So there's still two Congo countries. But nevertheless, we're talking about the larger one. And on that day, you have taking office two important Congolese men. One is the prime minister, one is the president. Without getting into all the details and so forth of it, just understand this. Prime minister's that's the most important political position, say, in Britain, right, under their system. President is the most important political position in the United States, under our system. In France, they actually have both, just like in here. You got a prime minister, a premier, and then you got a president. Depending on which constitution you're looking at, one might be more important than the other. For your purposes, just write down the names of these two men. Lumumba is the prime minister, and Kasavubu is the president. Okay? All right? There we go. They're up there right there. And it's in your handout, too. And you need to have the handout in front of you because I'm going to be I think I can pronounce most of these names. Kasavubu and Lumumba. All right? So they're in charge. And actually, this picture gives you a little bit of a sense because what do they inherit? Well, they got the country. And they got the military. But write this down. The officers in the military, the high-ranking officers in the military are all Belgian. So that part remains. And immediately you have a problem. 5 days later, July 5th, military mutiny against white officers. July 5th, 1960. There's no 31st in June. You know that. You go from June 1st to June 30th to July 1st. Anyway, within a week, a very short time period, you've got a mutiny going on in the military. And some of those, many of those African, lower-ranking officers and regular servicemen and so forth are starting to terrorize and get payback against Belgian civilian populations. Especially in, where did we identify that there were a lot of Belgian mining people and so forth living? Katanga, very good. And so those people are going around like, oh no, and Belgium, help! you gave this country its independence, and now we are in a big, big hurt. Right? And in fact, the Belgian people living in Katanga, along with local tribe people, here's the next step, they declare their own independence or secession, July 11th, 1960. So a lot of things are happening very quickly. It's almost like, let's say you take the history of the United States of America, you got the Declaration of Independence, and then you have the battle at Fort Sumter within a week. You get the independence of one country, and then you get the secession of an area. So who is declaring independence from the Congo? Katanga. Got it? Right? And Belgium supports it. That gets kind of messy. Belgium supports it. Why do you suppose, Trenton, Belgium supports Katanga being a separate country? Yeah, it's definitely about the benefit type thing. They figure that, they don't have to worry about the other countries so much because most of their interests are in the Katanga region, their economic interests, and so they support that. Rich in copper, gold, uranium, and other very rare minerals. Another part also tries to secede. So we got Katanga having a secession movement, and South Kasai is also saying, hey, you won't miss us. So they try to gain their independence. So this is getting really, really messy now. Who intervenes next? Oh, we'll get to Mobutu later. The United Nations now steps in. You're like, what? Because the United Nations was sort of, they were new. They'd been around for, maybe 15 years by that time. They got involved in the Korean War. And they're encouraging, the Europeans to get out of Africa. And so they take a role in the Congo situation. July 14, the United Nations says, Belgium, leave. Really, leave. Leave. Go. Get out of there. Don't take sides on some secession thing and so forth. Leave. And of course, Belgium's like, you can't tell me to leave. Meanwhile, Kasavubu and Lumumba are like, what the heck? We're in charge of a country, and we got areas of the country that are now going off into becoming different countries and so forth. We need some help. Now, this is where things get interesting. Lumumba makes a very critical, perhaps dangerous decision. Jack, guess who he turns to for military support to crush the secession movements in South Kasai, and then they want to move on to Katanga? Who do you think? No idea? I mean, who's out there in the world that might say, hey, we could use a little influence in, not Cuba necessarily, but behind that, I mean, Cuba indirectly, but Soviet Union. Write that down. The Soviet Union will give some help to Lumumba. Got that? So now we got all kinds of players going on in here. Belgium hasn't really left. You've got different things being made by Congolese leaders. You've got different areas kind of breaking. Is it getting confusing enough? Are you following along so far? Okay. Yes, Dan. No. I want to say Lumumba is this guy right here. Lumumba. That's not a Belgian name. I don't know. I think he's probably an officer within the Belgian authority. Either he's a high-ranking Congolese officer who's Belgian, or he's Belgian as part of the ceremony to grant independence. There's Lumumba, and there's Kasavubu. Sorry, I should have identified them much more clearly. All right? So Lumumba does this, right? Meanwhile, the United States is looking on the situation going, we don't like, now that the Soviets have jumped in, the United States is like, okay, now we're interested, and we support this guy, Mobutu Sese Seko. Mobutu, we support him. He is the chief of staff of the military. Why would we support him in an effort to gain control of the situation? Because we figure this guy is going to help us kick the Soviets' influence out of that area. That's what we're all about. This is Cold War. We got our Cold War glasses on, and if the Soviets are there, we are like, boom, get the heck out of there, Soviet Union. So we support this guy. Now, he's our man within the Congolese government structure, and he is going to, I don't know, what could he do? Well, here's an easy one. What part of the United States government is going to provide some very specific support for Mobutu to carry out our objectives and his objectives of gaining power? Very good, CIA, absolutely. So we got the CIA in there now, working to kick out the Soviet advisors. Well, guess who they're going to have to go after first? Who was the the Congolese leader who was saying, come on, Soviets, help me out here? That was Lumumba. How did it work out for him? Picture tells the story. No good. He is captured. He is removed by Mobutu. And who's he get help from? United States of America. And why are we involved in that area of the world? Because of the natural resources and because the Soviets are trying to step in. Lumumba. Yeah, they ultimately do. Yeah. He's murdered on January 17, 1961. Yeah, I mean, it took them a while to find him. You know, CIA takes a while. 17th, 1961. Okay? And the United States officially got involved in September of 1960 to help Mobutu. We following this? Crazy times. Everyone still with us? Okay? Go ahead. For which one? Murdered, yeah, January 17, 1961. Okay? So, what do we call this when we have a chief of military staff overthrowing a president or prime minister? A coup. Thank you very much. How do you spell coup? Yep, exactly. C-O-U-P. So this is coup number one, and the removal of Lumumba. Okay? Meanwhile, oh my gosh, this gets really, really weird. Meanwhile, now, we have the arrival of, in September of 1961, because things are still, you got fighting going on in the country, who's in charge, you still have Kasavubu's forces and so forth, and then you got Mobutu, and you got the United States, and you got the Belgians, you got everybody. And here is the United Nations General Secretary, okay, Hammarskjöld. I think I'm pronouncing that right. There's so many difficult names to do that. I've had some people with Norwegian background and so forth that say that is pronounced Hammarskjöld. Dag Hammarskjöld, and I think I'm mispronouncing the Dag part, but that's what I think is the easy part, D-A-G, Hammarskjöld. He arrives in the situation, trying to assess it and trying to get, peace and so forth. But of course, we've also got the United Nations troops in there. This is really crazy because the United Nations now is sending troops to help out who? Let's back it up a little bit. When Katanga said, we're out of here, was that supported by the United Nations? No. Who supported Katanga being independent? Belgium. Did Belgium send in troops to help those guys? Yes, and most of it was what you pointed out before. They wanted to protect their economic assets in Katanga. No. Not exactly. Eventually, we're going to get rid of Kasavubu, too. Let me give you a little bit of a hint how this is going to end up. He's going to win. Winner with the support of the United States of America. Losers. Well, they want a big country and so forth, but they immediately have problems because of the mutiny, and the mutiny causes Katanga to try to get independence. And so then, probably the critical mistake was Lumumba looks around and he's like, anybody? It's one of those things, if you're running for president and some idiot steps up and goes, I support you for president, what do? Say, sure, I like you idiots being on my side. No. If you're Lumumba and you're looking for a solution and you go to the Soviet Union, you may have part of a solution, but now you've got a whole other problem. Because does the United States want the Soviet Union to gain a foothold in Congo? No. So that's what is ultimately going to help doom Lumumba and ultimately Kasavubu. It's kind of like they all get sort of swept aside. And who does the United States see standing at the end of the day in charge, at least for a while, in charge of the country? Mobutu. But we got to throw something in there really crazy. You're going to love this, or maybe not. When we get to the United Nations, write this down. The United Nations is fascinating because sometimes the United Nations will get involved militarily, right? Korean War. What was the biggest component of the United Nations military force helping South Korea during the Korean War? Yes, you do. Exactly, United States, right? And there were some other countries involved there too. And we'll see this later when we look at other parts of the world. It's really weird because the United Nations, sometimes they'll send in forces and sometimes they're really restricted and so forth. And you try to get countries to volunteer to donate their forces. You'll never guess. Actually, if I point out at you, you will guess. Which country, that's the answer to the question, which country agrees to send in military force to help out the Congolese government as part of a United Nations force trying to put down the Belgian-supported Katanga secession independence movement? Ireland, write it down. Irish soldiers are going to Africa to fight Belgians. What the heck is that? I told you. Dag is trying to come up with a settlement. Oh, did I tell you what happens to Dag? Yeah, when he arrives, he's trying to come up with a settlement, and either his plane malfunctioned, or it got shot down by somebody who wasn't really interested in the United Nations participating in the whole Congo situation. Yes. What's that? Where's Ireland? Ireland's right next to Britain. Yeah. No, it's okay. Because they volunteered to help out as part of their United Nations responsibilities. I mean, it's wild. I mean, it's weird. This is like so weird. World War I, where you had like Europeans fighting each other, and literally there were battles going on in Africa. Like the German colonizers would get together a bunch of Africans, and they'd go and fight like British colonizers. And all these Africans are like, what the heck are we doing shooting at each other over like a fight that is from Europe? Well, now we bring it around full circle. We've got Belgians and Irish fighting each other, and not for very long, mind you. Okay? Not for very long. But, yeah. Oh, and Che. Oh, my gosh, I forgot about the Che part. Yes, go ahead. Beginning in 1961, I believe, the Irish were involved there. They're on the side of the government of the Congo, which is trying to keep the country unified. Yeah, Kasavubu. But Kasavubu will ultimately be removed from power. He's sort of like a hanger-on. It's kind of like drawing this out. It is hard to follow all the names and the people and so forth, but understand this. Who ultimately is going to win? Mobutu. Who's his biggest supporter? Very good. Who is going to try and sort things out? What happens to him? Dead. Who do you suppose here's one for you. Who do you suppose is also going to jump into the situation to try and help out the Congolese government? Cuba. And Che Guevara is actually going to show up himself. You can write that down. I told you about Che. He's like, hey, everything seems to be settled here in Cuba. I want to go on a anti-U.S. mission in the Congo. So there he is with a cigar and an African baby. I would say it would be the Kasavubu national government. Okay? Kinda. Sorta, kinda. I mean, the U.S.'s ultimate objective is to have, let's make this clear. Does the United States really want Katanga to be a separate area? No. What does the United States want? They want to have, like, their guy in charge of, well, how about the whole country? So what do we ultimately work toward? What was our ultimate objective? Help Mobutu, because will Mobutu give us access to those resources? Yeah. I mean, and ultimately the Belgians kind of get their way too, because do they want to have access to those resources? Sure. Do they need to have Katanga be a separate country? Not necessarily. They just need to make sure that Katanga is stabilized and that they can make money and continue mining. Good question. Good question. Is Mobutu in favor of Katanga being independent? No. What is Mobutu in favor of? Him being in charge of the whole country. And who's helping him? The United States. Yeah, he'll be in power for quite a bit, and he will be a dictator for many, 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 many years. Ellie, if they're on our side in the Cold War, we're not as particular at times with things like democracy and human rights and things like that. That's a problem of the Cold War. There's a bit of that, right? Sometimes, and here's a success story, South Korea. We help out a dictator in the early stages there to keep the communists out, and we encourage, and ultimately South Korea will develop a democracy with more protection of rights and so forth. But it is a difficult, you've identified the conundrum, okay? Did you want to talk to them? No, okay. The next group? Okay. Wipe your desk down. Yes, question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we were looking for, it was like the Soviets had kind of gotten in with Kasavubu and Lumumba, and we're like, those guys are lost. Let's find a better guy to be our guy. And that's why we went with Mobutu.